The scent of fresh flowers and expensive candles filled the private dining room at Harrington's, one of Chicago's finest restaurants. My future mother-in-law had insisted on hosting our engagement dinner here, and I remember thinking how beautiful the white roses looked in the crystal vases, how the golden light made everything feel warm and promising. 60 people we loved were gathered around tables draped in ivory linen. I was wearing the navy dress my best friend had helped me pick out, the one that made me feel confident and elegant. My fiancé, who I'll call my partner here, squeezed my hand under the table and smiled at me, and I thought, this is it. This is the beginning of everything. I was 31 years old. I had spent the last 8 years building my career as a healthcare consultant, traveling, saving, investing carefully. I owned a condo in Lincoln Park that I purchased entirely on my own at 28. I had a 401k, an emergency fund, and a Roth IRA. My mother used to say I was the most organized person she'd ever met. I wasn't reckless with anything, not my money, not my heart. I had been with my partner for 2.5 years. We met at a mutual friend's rooftop party on a July 4th. He was smart, funny, and seemed genuinely proud of my ambitions. He worked in commercial real estate and was close with his family, his mother, his father, and his younger sister, who I'll call his sister throughout this. I knew they were tight-knit. I respected that. What I didn't know yet was exactly what that meant for me. The dinner started beautifully. There were toasts, laughter, stories from college friends. His father stood up and gave a lovely speech about love and commitment. His mother dabbed her eyes. I felt genuinely welcomed. And then his sister stood up. She was 26, confident in the way people are when they've never been told no. She clinked her glass and smiled at the room with the kind of smile that doesn't quite reach the eyes. She said she wanted to share something special, a little tradition in their family, a way of honoring what it meant to truly join them. I remember the exact moment the warmth left the room for me. She reached into a small clutch bag and pulled out what looked like a folded note card. She said, and I'm not exaggerating, that in their family, the women took care of the home. She said that Sunday dinners would be at the family house, and as the new wife, I would be expected to help prepare and serve. She said their mother's recipe books would be passed to me and I would be responsible for continuing those traditions. She said that family finances, meaning the household budget for my partner and me, would be reviewed monthly by his mother to make sure we were building correctly. She said all of this with the tone of someone reading a welcome packet at a corporate orientation. The table went quiet. I looked at my partner. He was looking at his plate. I looked at his mother. She was nodding slightly, a small smile on her face, like this was the most natural thing in the world. I took a breath. I kept my voice calm and even because I've learned that the most powerful thing a woman can do when she is blindsided in public is refuse to perform the reaction people are waiting for. I said, "That's interesting. Can I ask, are these formal family requirements or more like personal preferences?" His sister blinked. She said they were expectations, cherished ones. I said, "And the monthly financial review with your mother, is that something my partner agreed to?" She said it was how their family had always done things. I said, "I see." And then I picked up my wine glass and took a sip, and I smiled, and I said to the table that it had been a wonderful evening. I turned to my partner's parents and thanked them for their generosity. I was gracious, I was warm, I gave nothing away. But inside, something had shifted in a way I couldn't undo. Later that night, in the car, I waited for my partner to say something. I waited the entire 40-minute drive back to my condo. He said traffic was bad. He said the salmon was overcooked. He said he was tired. I said, "Are you going to talk about what happened tonight?" He said, "My sister can be a lot sometimes. She means well." I said, "She announced that your mother would be reviewing our finances every month at our engagement dinner in front of 60 people." He said, "It's just a tradition. It doesn't have to be a big deal." And there it was. Not his sister. Not his mother. Him. I didn't argue. I said goodnight, and the next morning before he was even awake, I called my best friend, who also happened to be a practicing family law attorney, and I told her everything. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment, and then she said, "Don't sign anything. Don't change anything in your financial accounts. And document everything from here on out," I said. "You think this is that serious?" she said. "I think you should find out exactly what you're walking into before you walk into it." I took her advice. I started paying attention in a different way. Over the next 6 weeks, I noticed things I had unconsciously been explaining away. The way his mother called on Sunday mornings to check in, which often turned into 45-minute conversations where she asked detailed questions about our weekend plans and spending. The way his sister texted him constantly and he would angle his phone slightly away from me when he responded. The way, when I mentioned we were thinking about refinancing my condo to pull equity for a joint investment property, his father immediately suggested we meet with the family's financial guy first. I started writing things down. Dates, conversations, specific comments. Not because I was building a case. Not yet. But because I am a consultant by profession, and documentation is how I think. Then came the conversation about the house. My partner and I had been discussing buying a larger place together. My condo was mine outright. No mortgage, purchased with cash savings and a small inheritance from my grandmother. We had talked about selling it and pooling the proceeds towards something bigger in the suburbs, something with a yard, room to grow. It was exciting. It was a real plan. One Saturday afternoon, we went to look at a property in Evanston. It was beautiful. 4 bedrooms, renovated kitchen, a backyard with old oak trees. The listing price was $680,000. I had done the math carefully. If I contributed the full proceeds from my condo sale, approximately $300,000, and he contributed what he'd saved, approximately $60,000, I would be providing roughly 83% of the down payment. I mentioned this on the drive home. Casually, I said I wanted to make sure we discussed how ownership would be structured given the difference in contributions. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "My family thinks we should put it in both our names equally." I said, "Your family has been discussing our home purchase?" He said his parents wanted to make sure we were starting on equal footing. He said his father had some concerns about one person having more leverage than the other. I said very carefully, "I would be contributing over 80% of the purchase price," he said, "but we'd be building a life together." That night I called my attorney friend again. I told her about the Evanston conversation. I told her about the financial review tradition. I told her about the Sunday calls and the family financial advisor and all of it, all at once, everything I'd been documenting. She was quiet for longer this time. Then she said, "I need to ask you something directly. Do you want to marry him, or do you want to marry the version of him you thought he was?" I didn't answer right away. I stared at the ceiling of my bedroom in my condo that I had bought with my own money, and I thought about that question for a long time. I said, "I don't know yet." She said, "Then before you do anything else, let's protect you." We spent the next 2 hours on the phone. She walked me through what I needed to do. Keep all assets in my name only. Do not move any money into joint accounts until there was a clear legal agreement. If we were going to buy property together, a cohabitation agreement or a prenuptial agreement needed to clearly outline contribution percentages and ownership stakes. She told me to keep my condo off the market for now. She told me to stop discussing financial specifics with his family. And then she said one more thing. She said, "Start recording conversations. Not to use against him, just so you have an accurate record. Memory is unreliable under emotional stress." Illinois is a one-party consent state. What she was suggesting was entirely legal. I bought a small voice recorder app for my phone. I hoped I would never need it. 3 weeks before the wedding, his mother called me. Not to chat. She had a purpose in her voice from the first second. She said she and the family had been thinking, and they felt it would be best if the Evanston house was purchased in my partner's name only. She said it would protect him in case anything happened, and that I would of course have full access as his wife. She said the family had spoken with a property attorney and this was the cleanest arrangement. I said I would be providing 83% of the down payment. She said, and he'll be providing a lifetime of stability. I heard my own heartbeat in my ears. I said I would think about it. I ended the call. I opened my recorder app and I listened back to the whole conversation. Then I forwarded it to my attorney friend. Her response came back in 4 minutes. Do not sell your condo. Do not transfer any funds. Call me tomorrow morning. That was a Tuesday. On Wednesday, I was in her office. On Thursday, I had a clear understanding of exactly what I was dealing with. And on Friday, 1 week before my rehearsal dinner, I made a decision. I had not fully decided to call off the wedding, but I had decided I would not be going into it blind. I reached out to my partner and asked him to meet me for dinner, just the two of us, at a restaurant I liked, neutral ground, somewhere I felt steady. I had my phone in my jacket pocket, recorder running. I told him I needed us to have an honest conversation about the house, about his family's involvement in our finances, and about what our marriage was actually going to look like. He seemed nervous. He said his family just wanted to help. I said, I need to hear from you, not from your family. What do you expect my role to look like? What does your mother's involvement in our finances look like in year 1, year 5, year 10? He said his mother would give us guidance. He said his sister had experience with household management. He said it was just the way things worked in close families. I said, does a close family need to review our bank statements monthly? He looked uncomfortable. He said it wasn't really reviewing, more like advising. I said, I want to be very clear with you. I will not be putting my condo proceeds into a property that is in your name only. I will not have our finances reviewed by your mother or anyone in your family without my explicit agreement. And I need to know if you understand that these are not negotiable points for me, or if your family's expectations are. He was quiet for a long time, the kind of quiet that answers the question. Finally, he said, My family is important to me. I said, I know, but I need to know if I am more important. He said, That's not a fair question. I went home. I barely slept. And at 4 a.m, I sat at my kitchen table and I made my list. The things I had loved about him. The things I had loved about him. The things I had ignored. The things I had explained away. The things I now understood clearly. The list was not close. I called my attorney friend at 7 a.m. I said, I need to know how to unwind everything. She said, Are you sure? I said, I'm sure. What followed was the most methodical 2 weeks of my life. My attorney walked me through every step. My condo was never listed, so there was nothing to undo there. The joint savings account we'd opened for wedding expenses had equal contributions. Splitting it was straightforward. The vendors were harder. The venue, the caterer, the photographer. Some deposits were lost. Some were partially refundable. My attorney helped me draft the cancellation letters and reviewed the contracts line by line. I told my partner by phone 2 days before the rehearsal dinner. I had drafted what I wanted to say and I kept the conversation short and clear. I told him I had given this serious thought and I could not enter a marriage where his family's authority over our life together was an assumed condition. I told him I wished him well, and I meant it. He said very little on the call, but that night my phone showed 42 missed calls. His sister, his mother, his college roommate who I had met twice, his father, 3 times. I did not answer any of them. I turned off my phone and I made tea and I sat in my quiet condo, my walls, my life, and I felt something I had not expected to feel. Relief. Not the fragile kind, the kind that sits on top of grief and might collapse at any moment. Real relief. The kind that comes from knowing you made the right call even when it cost you something. Because it did cost me something. I had loved him. Or I had loved who I thought I was choosing. I had imagined a specific life. Letting go of that was not painless. But here is what I have learned, and what I want to leave you with if you have watched this whole story and felt even a flicker of recognition. The warning signs were there. They were there at the engagement dinner when he looked at his plate instead of standing up for me. They were there in every conversation where his family's comfort was prioritized over my clarity. They were there when the question of whose name the house went in was answered not by logic or fairness, but by an assumption that my contribution was a given and his authority was a right. Love is not a reason to abandon your own judgment. It is not a reason to sign your name to something that erases you. The strongest thing I did was not calling off that wedding. The strongest thing I did was the 2 weeks before it, when I sat in my attorney's office and I asked every uncomfortable question, and I listened to every answer, and I refused to let anyone make me feel dramatic for needing the truth. I moved forward. I kept my condo. 6 months later, I got a promotion, the one I'd been working toward for 2 years. My attorney friend and I still have dinner every other Tuesday. I am not rushing toward anything. And my phone? I have 42 missed calls permanently, screenshotted in my photos folder. Not because I'm bitter, because I want to remember what it felt like the morning I chose myself, and never forget that it was the right choice.